So, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you very much for having me here today. And I would first like to speak to the students and to tell them, you are learning foreign languages. Please do it. Please learn as many foreign languages as possible. It will change your life. In a few years from now, everyone will be able to walk around with an app that will translate any language to you. I mean, DeepL is already there, but at some point you will have this thing in your ear and you can speak Kazakh, or you think you can speak Kazakh. You will understand what the Kazakh is telling you, or someone from Papua New Guinea. But that's not speaking a language. If you want to really understand the world and understand other countries and foreign cultures, you need to understand the soul of those nations. And you don't do it through a translation program. It's never going to work. And one of the reasons why I chose the job of a diplomat, besides the fact that my mother forced me to, is because it's out of love. Love for learning, love for foreign cultures, love for trying to understand people who seem so different from us, and they are very different from us, but in the end are also very, very interesting human beings. And this is what makes the work of diplomacy so fascinating. It is the opportunity. You actually pay your whole life to travel, meet extraordinary people, meet foreign cultures, get to learn them, to understand them, or at least to pretend to understand them, and it makes our life really fascinating. So yeah, I've been here in the US since 2019, and a lot has happened in 2019. I came in 2019 BC. Before COVID, so it was. Let's think about how it was in 2019. President Trump was basically cruising towards re-election. Let's face it. That was the reality back then. The world was largely at peace. There were first tensions with China, but no one would really have thought, that what we saw was going to happen. All the pundits were telling us a few things that I would like you to remember, just to realize how wrong pundits can be. We were told that the 21st century was going to be Chinese, and that it was not anymore about the Chinese catching up with us, it was about us catching up with the Chinese. Everyone was telling us that the 21st century was going to be run by the BRICS. Do you remember the BRICS? Yeah. Okay, so everyone was telling us that we would see the de-dollarization of the world's economy. Everyone was telling us that war in Europe had become an impossibility. And I could go on with all this conventional wisdom that everyone just believed and got down like it would be God's word. And now it's 2023 and we're living in a very different world. And this very different world is scary. We are heading towards stormy waters and only worse. I had a dark joke, I keep saying if you liked the 20th century, you're going to love the 21st. I hope I'm wrong, but we are heading for difficult times. In my time in the US, first there was this thing called COVID. Yeah, there was this thing called COVID that upended everything that we were used to because it had been a century since the last pandemic. Then there was George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and suddenly all the old wounds coming up again to the surface and pointing the finger at things that still need to be corrected in this country of yours. Then there was the presidential election. Then there was the peaceful expression of political dissent by storming the Capitol on January the 6th. And then finally there was the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and the world is very, very, very different from the one that we knew. Now, this world is scary because all the norms that we were used to are being put into question. Oh, I forgot something that the conventional wisdom told us back in 2019. Decoupling is not possible. Deglobalization is not possible. The world's economies are so intertwined right now that it would be folly and it would be totally unproductive and thus not going to happen. There will be no decoupling of the world's economy. Do you remember people telling that? It's like the people in 1914 in Europe saying, oh great, Europe's economies are so interlinked that a war in Europe is impossible. That's 1914, the sleepwalkers going into one of the major catastrophes in human history. So I think we are a little bit more realistic now. And being a little bit more realistic means we have seen, first of all, that globalization has made a lot of things possible, but globalization also had a few very dark corners. First of all, we were exporting the dirty and cheap jobs to countries where they actually could cope with it. But we also exported a lot of our industrial potential. And then, a few years later, we do realize that our supply chains have become totally dependent on countries that do not necessarily share the same systems, and where you don't have any guarantee that you will play by the rules the day you really need them. One question, do you know how many factories still produce antibiotics in Europe? 1. In the US, 3. The rest has been, let's say, delegated to maybe China and India. And certainly you have a problem with, we're fighting right now with a shortage in antibiotics. And that's one of many examples of what's happening. So we had COVID, and COVID disrupted supply chains. And because we realized that it was unwise to have so many critical goods, strategic goods being produced so far away by countries that do not necessarily play by our rules, that now we are speaking about repatriating, nearshoring, friendshoring, or totally reshoring. That's a big lesson. The second lesson, and that's a lesson for the Europeans, is, you know what? Yes, war is possible, and war is possible in Europe. For more than 30 years, my continent has been living in a dream and in total denial, totally disarming, of course, still counting on the Americans ultimately, if something happens to get us out of here as usual. But the reality is that we have found ourselves as a continent faced with a massive illegal aggression of one country against another country on our own continent. And if it were not for the Americans, and once again, thank you, because if it were not for the Americans, Vladimir Putin would be in Kiev, and Europe would look very, very, very different from what it is today. So that is something, it's another lesson that we really had to learn. Now, in such a world, there is always the same tendency, and things that can happen is that countries will tend to just look at themselves and just look after their own interests, or what they perceive as their own interests. Meaning, you go protectionist. You go America first, Europe first, Japan first, and this is a very, very dangerous development. Why is that? If I look at the relationship between Switzerland and the United States of America, two countries that are, of course, not the same size, but two countries who share the same values and the same culture. For us, for the two of us, globalization has been very positive because it was at eye level, because it was not about exporting dirty jobs or trying to, or cheap jobs. We don't have cheap jobs. We don't have cheap products. We are sorry. So it was about cooperating, and two economies cooperating and playing by the rules, being members of the WTO but abiding by the rules of the WTO, being members of the International Organization on Intellectual Property but sticking by the rules of the respect of intellectual property. And you know what? Over the last 25 years, both our countries have been making a lot of money with each other. So we are the demonstration, our relationship is a demonstration that globalization is possible as long as it's between mature economies that respect the rule of law and the international rules. Then it really does work. Speaking about our presence in the US, when I started at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs 35 years ago, the US was our 7th biggest trading partner. So not negligible, but frankly, we were behind Italy, behind France, behind Germany, of course, because Germany was number 1. Now, for 4 years in a row, the US has been our main trading partner. So you are now 18% of our exports. It's just the United States of America. The other way around, we are the 7th biggest investor in the American economy. But in research and development, we are on the podium. And the other two are just Germany and Japan. So 2 small countries, like 2 small economies. So we are ahead of the UK, ahead of China, ahead of any other economy in the world in terms of the research and development money that we are investing in the US market. And we don't do this because, of course we do this because we love the United States. But we do it mainly because we are making good money in the US for the Swiss economy and the other way around. And so every time I hear politicians on both sides of the pond saying, we need to have punishing tariffs, we need to reintroduce protectionism, and you name it. I go like, are you crazy? Are you crazy? What we need to do is for us, the free world, and the free world includes, of course, countries like South Korea, like Japan, like Singapore, like large parts of Latin America, and Europe, EU, and Europe, non-EU, we have to stick together. We have to make our borders even more open than they were before, not only for trade and for exchanges, but also, and that is something that we, the Swiss, have been working on very, very, very closely for 20 years, academic and scientific cooperation. Because the 21st century will be dominated by the countries that will be the most advanced in fundamental science and in applied sciences. And there may be a word of encouragement for our American friends. Because you keep hearing these stories that the USA is falling behind in terms of science. Now, if one tries to analyze what are the key technologies that are going to determine the future of the 21st century, the United States of America is leading or co-leading in 9 out of 11 of these key technologies. This country is still amazing. And you know what makes this country really special? What makes this country really special is the fact that you are the biggest vacuum cleaner for talent in the history of humankind. How many people in this room are not born in the US? Okay. Not born in the US. Why are they here? Why are they not in China? How many foreigners live in China? Do you know how many foreigners live in China? Less than 1 million. That's 3 times less than in Switzerland. Where do you think the future lies? In the country where all the best brains, the best scientists, the best engineers, the best doctors want to come because they are offered a future, because they are offered an American dream that is still alive, and I can tell you it's still alive, because they are offered the best opportunities to do research. And why do they all flock to the United States of America? Because this country still has this incredible ability to integrate wave after wave after wave of people from so many different backgrounds, from so many different countries, warts and all. And of course, at every new wave, there have been the same reactions like America is not anymore what it used to be. these Irish people, oh my God, these Irish people coming into America, oh my God, these Italians, and then these Russian Jews, and every time it was the same reaction. America is not anymore what it used to be. America is exactly what it used to be. The greatest integration machine in the history of humankind. And this is, we are trying to emulate the Americans in Switzerland because we actually have a similar system. It's not American, but we are close to it. And last year, that's the statistics I'm very proud of. We retained more top scientists who have been studying in Switzerland than the US does. Not in absolute terms, of course, but proportionally. So we are trying to learn from it. Now, I'm watching the developments in this country, and I've been here, as I said, for 4 years, but I was for the first time in the US when Jimmy Carter was running for president. 1976. So I've been in love with this country, and I've been studying this country for more than I care to remember. It makes me so old. But if I look at what's happening in this country, it's time for you to gain some of your, or to regain some of your optimism about your own country, instead of listening to all these defeatist, negative narratives from the right and conservative side, like America is not anymore what it used to be, and they are changing this country, which has been changing forever since it was founded, because it's in the very DNA of the country to change all the time. And at the same time, the defeatist visions from the so-called progressives about this country is the heart of darkness, and it's horrible, and it's the worst country in the history of humankind. One wonders why so many people still want to come to this horrible place, but okay. So it's time, I think it's time for us, and now generally, democracies, liberal countries, liberal in the European sense, liberal in terms of economy, business friendly, interested in science. It's time for us to regain confidence. It's time for us to know that whatever we do, and of course sometimes we make mistakes, but in the end, our systems are the ones that are going to prevail. We should really forget about this inferiority complex towards all these authoritarian states, like, they play chess, we play poker, they plan for 20 years or 50 years, we plan until the next election. Well, if COVID is to be a lesson on the superiority of democratic systems over the rest of the other systems, well, look at what happened. Well, just remind me, where were the successful vaccines developed?
India.
No, United States of America, India. In the end, it was the United States of America, of course, with intense scientific cooperation with Europe. Which countries emerged in the end with their economies still functioning at the end of COVID? Well, it was largely democratic countries. Only democracies can unleash the kind of creative power and of creative and of creativity generally that is there in the population, but cannot be developed if there is always a party hack who tells you what the scientific truth is, or what the real, whatever the ideological vision is. So, I personally believe that the 21st century is going to be tough. We haven't spoken much about, and we could speak about what could possibly happen in the South China Sea, which is a terrifying prospect. A war in the South China Sea is not a nice idea. But I'm personally convinced that the 21st century will belong to liberal democracies, and we will win the fight for the 21st century. That is, if we stick together. That is, if we don't let ourselves be divided by stupid protectionist measures, and by policies that tend to be so isolationist. Because if we go isolationist, we are too small to go isolationist. So when I look at a state like North Carolina, and what has been happening in this state over the past 30 years, and how brick after brick you build something that so many arrogant people, maybe a little bit further north, would have deemed possible in the south of the line. And you look at the clusters that you have created around the research triangle, and how much brilliant, forward-looking companies you have been managed to attract to North Carolina, and it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. I do believe that there is a future for our bilateral relationship as a Swiss, both with the United States and with North Carolina. So I would like to thank you for your hospitality and just tell you this is an amazing country. Thank you.
Absolument, on le fait tout à fait en français. My name is Laura Wellman, delighted to be a member of the board of the World Affairs Council and the former honorary consul of France. And I will say, bienvenue, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur, and to say that our ambassador is the first French-Swiss ambassador in 40 years in Switzerland. And I would like to give that a round of applause. So I'd like to switch gears. We talked a little on the economic front, talked on the political front even. So maybe we could go to the social front, i.e. from an outside-in standpoint, those of us who are looking at Switzerland from outside in and haven't spent as much time there perhaps. What is happening in your country from a people perspective in terms of their shifts over the last, I guess, 35 years since you started your diplomatic service? What have you seen? Because there are, at least 4 different distinct groups, one could argue. How have they come together? How have they acted as a group in terms of their focus on the outside world and the growth of Switzerland as an international superstar?
Okay, so thank you very much for the question, and frankly, I have to say Switzerland is a unique country, and it's not necessarily a unique country. We are unique because the history of how Switzerland was founded is unique in history. It started in the 13th century with very small groups of mountain farmers who just didn't want to be part of the Habsburg dominions. And so they united, not out of love for each other, but out of, let's say, they really didn't like the big neighbor. And over the centuries, and I will not go into the details, but more and more small communities conglomerated around the original Switzerland until we reached what is our final border in 1815 at the Treaty of Vienna. But it was a marriage of convenience. And sometimes the marriages of convenience work as well as the marriages out of love. Because you have good reasons to be together. Obviously, we didn't have reasons to be together. We had French speakers, Italian speakers, German speakers, but then after the 16th century, we have Protestants and Catholics, which led to a few civil wars and a few religious wars. Then we have city people against the mountain people, against the farmers in the so-called flat areas, because what we call flat, we call mountains. But anyway, we have evolved into, there is a kind of a social contract in Switzerland that has evolved into some idea of a nation, which is we are better off together than being part of one of the big nations around us. And it worked very well for centuries, and it still works very well. There have been tensions, of course, but one has to understand that the tensions are never between the same groups. It's not French speakers against German speakers or Italian speakers. Sometimes it is, but next time it will be Catholics against Protestants. Next time it will be mountains against cities. So Switzerland is a country of ever-shifting minorities that conglomerate to form a majority for the vote we're just voting about. It forces us to live together. And the fact that we now have 30% of the population that is either foreign-born or of foreign origins, or whose parents were, didn't change anything of it. The system works very well. Because as soon as you come into one of these communities, next generation you identify as a Zurichois, a Zuricher, or as a Valaisan, or whatever, one of the cantons, and you start integrating into a political system that has been, with trial and error, developing over centuries. Is everything perfect in Switzerland? No, it's not. Do we face major challenges? Like every other country, we face first of all the challenge of our the population that's aging, and we have a pension system that was designed at the time when you would usually survive 3 years into your pension. Now the average is 20. So it makes a huge difference. Is our health system healthy? Well, it used to be. It's not anymore because there are all these new technologies coming that are so expensive, and the people get older and older and older. So we've struggled to finance our health system. Is our education system perfect? Well, almost. No, but it's not doing too badly. It's not doing too badly, but it's a constant struggle to keep. And then you have the struggle of having 9 million people on less than half of the territory, because the other half of the territory is uninhabitable. It's mountains where there are no humans. So we are more and more crowded. So our faulty train system that is supposed to be always on time is sometimes 1 minute late. So now it's terrifying. So we're losing it here. So we are facing challenges. We are facing challenges in our relationship with the European Union. We never wanted to join the European Union for various reasons. They would like us to join the club, and they are exerting not always a very friendly pressure. And it's a constant negotiation. When the Brits voted for Brexit, and I remember meeting British diplomats, and they were telling us, we will negotiate the Brexit in 2 months. And I said, yeah, guys, let me tell you, you have been negotiating with the EU from the inside since 1966. Now try it from the outside, and you will see how it is. Well, it was a little bit more complicated. So anyway, we're not without challenges, but so far we are doing well. And the reason why I'm so keen, by the way, on trying to even improve even further our relationship with the US is that because sometimes it's a little bit difficult with the EU. So every export that we can do and every cooperation that we can do with the US helps us compensate for the difficulties that we have with the more immediate neighbors, which of course we do love. We love them, but sometimes we keep friends. We can have some differences.
Thank you. And now I would like to open it up to the floor, ask you for a fairly brief question if you would, and stand up, raise your hand if you'd like to offer a question to our ambassador. Frederic?
Mr. Ambassador, could you comment on the position of neutrality of Switzerland in an environment where a number of other countries have revised the position and where your president is also on the UN Security Council?
Yes, I can. Neutrality. Neutrality is a legal concept, first of all. And it's defined in international law as you are not supposed to meddle into anyone's military conflict as long as you're not yourself attacked. So you never attack, so you're never the aggressor, and you have to be ready to defend yourself, but you should not participate in other people's conflicts. It served us well. The neutrality served us well for quite a long time when Europe was tearing itself apart. And Switzerland, thank God, was spared the horrors of World War I and World War II. Now it is increasingly perceived by the outside world, and especially by the Europeans, as a very selfish policy. Because anyway, we are surrounded by friends. So if there is a war, they will fight, and until someone from outside arrives in the Swiss territory, they will have been worn down by NATO. So it is increasingly seen by many people outside and by some people in Switzerland as a selfish policy that should. We have joined the EU sanctions after the Russian aggression against Ukraine. It was a storm of protest in Switzerland by people who were saying we are giving up something that really belongs to our DNA, which is, by the way, ignoring the 500 years of Swiss history when we were the scourge of Europe and attacking everything in our bed, because we were not always neutral, contrary to what people would think. But neutrality has become a moral conundrum and a moral discussion. Because some people in Switzerland, and I think they are the vast majority, think that it's really our God's given mission to be neutral. Also because at some point when the conflict stops, there needs to be a place where the warring parties can meet and talk. And that's in a neutral country. So it's, you know, our humanitarian streak. And there are also people who think that it's just in our interest to be neutral, and then there are the cynical ones who just want to do business with everyone. You know, we have the whole thing. I don't think I will see Swiss neutrality being abolished in my lifetime, but we are interpreting it lately a little bit more restrictively. Like we stick to the military neutrality, but not to the morality, the neutrality of values. And that's what we're trying to explain to people. That neutrality doesn't mean neutrality of values. Neutrality doesn't mean that there is a genocide happening next door and you just look the other way because you're neutral. That is not what neutrality should be about. Though some people see it like that. It's a difficult, and one of the things is that for decades we have been actually admired by the international community for being neutral. And people will say, look at the Swiss, you know, they are different, you know, they're peaceful, they're neutral. Now we are increasingly being criticized for being neutral. Like this thing being a selfish attitude and just hoping that the Americans, of course, and to a point the Europeans are going to solve the problems for us. I don't have an answer.
I want to look to our student tables back there too for a question, and I see one in the far right. If you could let us know what school your name and school that you're from.
My name is Linus, and I go to North Carolina World Languages. So outside of early morning bird watching, what does an ambassador's typical day entail?
Lunch. What's difficult, you know, the thing is, it all depends where you are. But if you're the ambassador of Switzerland in a country like the United States of America, you can cover 5 different topics in the same day. It can be a protocol of scientific cooperation with Caltech on quantum computing. Next thing you know, it's a problem you have to deal with Treasury in terms of a Swiss bank that's having some difficulties and then you need to do something about it. Next thing you know, it can be opening a cultural exhibition. Next thing you know, it would be something on the intelligence and security questions that you know we have a very strong relationship with. And then inevitably in the evening, a dinner. Which is almost so it's about 300 times a year where we have events, either at the residence and I have to go to events. So my typical day is 5 o'clock, either I go birding if it's a season, or I go for my workout, and then I'm at the office until 6 o'clock, and then 6:30 is the dinner or the event or something. It takes a lot of discipline. In terms of trying to stick and get enough sleep, not too much alcohol, enough sleep, not eat too much, trying to stay focused. But it's fascinating because you touch upon so many different things. And you know what's so nice being an ambassador is you get to meet people you would never meet in a normal life. And people, if they don't come for you, they come for because of what you represent. And I just give you an example. The other day we were saying goodbye to a Swiss guy who was for a long time the number 2 at NASA. And I had the whole leadership of NASA on my table. I mean, how many times in life do you have such an opportunity? And you're listening to these people who are incredible scientists, and you pretend to understand what they're saying. Yeah.
Excellent. Other questions? See, we're right in the center table there, sir. Yes.
Could you say a little bit about Martin Greger and the Swiss presence in Utah?
Well, the Swiss presence in the US, because it's not just in Utah, we are everywhere. We are, the Swiss private sector is in every one of the 50 states in America. One of the industrial presences we are very proud of is the fact that we are building the most modern trains in the United States, and they are built in Utah. So they are not built abroad and imported to the United States, but they are built in Utah. And we are trying to convince more and more states and more municipalities to go over to this thing that you might have heard about called public transportation system. It's actually very useful and it works pretty well, and it's environmental friendly, and then you're not in the traffic. It is difficult. It is difficult to convince American cities and American agglomerations to go over to a public transportation system because your cities were conceived differently, for one. Secondly, because your permitting system, it depends on one state to the next, but the permitting system is a nightmare. I think that around San Bernardino, they've been trying to install a train for 30 years. And it's just, the permitting system is almost impossible. But we want to be part of it. We produce clean tech in the US, and clean tech means from carbon capture to new ceramics for power plants, make the power plants much more efficient. You name it. We are everywhere in the US trying to be part of the conversion of the American economy to a greener economy. And it's a fascinating task. And we have a German colleague here. The Germans are extremely strong also in these fields, so are the Austrians. And the good thing is about the American market, it reminds me of the old Western, like this city is big enough for the two of us. So there is enough space for all of us, and there is so much technology that we can exchange with Americans. May I say something about greening America? Before you start putting up all these nice green gadgets, just to make sure that you produce a little bit less, could you start with packaging? Your packaging habits. That is really something that's so shocking to Europeans. Like every time all this cardboard and this plastic and this thing, that is something that where even when you package normal things, the plastic will be 3 times the size of the dent that it is in Europe. There is a lot that you could do there in terms of before going into much more heavier investments. But that was just the bird watching me who is not too happy to see all this plastic in the river or something. Yeah. Okay.
I think I'm throwing out the plastic baggies at home. Let's see if there's some other questions out here. I see with the lovely coral dress.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Camilla. Thank you for being here. I was wondering when you were talking about how the economy of Switzerland is becoming more globalized, I wonder how you thought how to keep a balance between maintaining an economy that's very open to international trade versus an economy that's more like self-sustaining without foreign intervention.
I think it's a very, very good question because it's one of the problems we've been confronted with forever. Why is Switzerland so successful with high technologies and science and whatever? Because we had nothing. We had no natural resources. And this is the reason why the only natural resources we had was our brains. And for centuries, we had 2 major export products. One was cheese, and the other one was mercenaries. Which made us, we survived because of our mercenary trade. So we were selling soldiers or renting soldiers to anyone who would pay, including all the ones who were manning the French forts in the Greater Louisiana. We were there before you were. This is what forced us to become an open economy. So 52% of our GDP is exports. But you look at the size of Switzerland, basically, North Carolina is bigger than Switzerland. And so we need to be able to trade. So we've always been in favor of free trade. which doesn't mean that we do not realize how detrimental it can be to the environment, depending on what you do. So we specialize now more and more into extremely high value, small volume products, where it's not that you're filling super tankers with Swiss products. They're smaller quantities. So I think we are becoming more sustainable. Are we perfect? No, we are not. Is all of our energy green? It's not. Is the recycling system in Switzerland perfect? Well, nearly, but not there yet. Not there yet. There is still a lot that we can do. Is our water management system what it should be? Well, I remember the time when I was your age when one could not take a swim in the Geneva Lake because it would have been unhealthy, detrimental to your health. And nowadays the water is clean again. The wildlife is coming back. We are trying. But it's a constant competition between trying to keep your economy alive and keep the people happy and keep growing and give them the consumer goods that they want to have, and at the same time keeping whatever is left of nature alive. It's not easy. It's really not easy. I don't know whether we are the best example. We are certainly one of the leading countries, but there are probably some countries who do better than we do.
I think Andrew was first over here, and then. Thank you.
Excuse me. Hi, my name is Andrea Pierce, and I'm switching gears a little bit with my question. Switzerland has always been known for so many great things, and included in that has been the banking system. So what's the Swiss reaction now to the UBS acquisition of Credit Suisse?
So our reaction to what happened a few weeks ago is anger. Anger because this was not necessary. Because it was not a systemic crisis. It was a case of blatantly bad management over decades. And so it was the case of one of the jewels of the Swiss banking being destroyed by incompetent managers. Doesn't make us happy. Now, these things happen because Credit Suisse going down the drain could have meant the unleashing of an international banking crisis. We had to act and to act very quickly. The government had to, so the government did. There will be criticism of what they did, and maybe we could have done it differently. How do you say Monday morning quarterbacks? Yeah, that's how you say it in English. Yeah. So it's a typical case for the Monday morning quarterbacks. I think the government saved the day together with Treasury. There was a very strong cooperation because at the same time, I think you were struggling with some problems in California. Similar problems of excellent management and excellent risk management. So now what is our problem is that we have created a bank that has an accumulated wealth which is 2.5 times our GDP. Your biggest bank in the US has the equivalent of 16% of the US's GDP. Now the new UBS is 250% of the Swiss GDP. That's too much. It's a great risk. So I don't know how we're going to cope with it, but at some point, like splitting, I would be in favor of splitting, but I don't know whether the legal means to decide it's going to be split. But the thing is, it was not a systemic crisis. The banking system is not in crisis. It is, struggling like always, but it's not in a crisis. And this thing should not have happened. Like the thing in California should not have happened.
Quick question.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I'd like to pass it to which table did we say? Or say yes. In the back there on the right, student table. No, the middle there. Sorry. I know that. That's why I was fighting for two.
My name is Fatima from South Academy of International Languages, and my question is, has it always been your dream to become an ambassador, and how did you become one?
I didn't get the first one.
Has it always been your dream?
No, it was my mother's dream. I always wanted to become the director of Swiss intelligence, which I became after a while. But my mother wanted, because in my family, at each generation, they look at the kids when they are like 16 or a little bit younger, and then they say, okay, this one is going to medical school, because that's the tradition in the family. But this one is slightly dumb, we'll send him to law school. That was me. And so I went to law school, and then at some point my mother said, what is he going to do? So she tried to convince me to go and take the exam for diplomacy. And I was really not enthusiastic, but I said, Carlos, listen, Mom, I'll show you that I can do it. And then finally, here I am. If I had known what an incredible career this is, I would have gone. It wouldn't have taken my mother to force me. I would have gone because intellectually speaking, it's such an interesting career. It's such an interesting career. I love diplomacy. It's fun. It's really fun. And it's good for the fundraising.
Thank you. And our last question to my right.
Hi, I'm Rod. What do you think is missing in the Swiss-American relationship today that you're hoping to try to improve on during your time as Switzerland's ambassador to the United States?
I would say not much. Not much. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult, depending on the administration, to get the level of attention that we, as an important partner of the United States, should be granted. But the United States being a superpower, they have, okay, I keep joking, either we should be a giant, like Brazil and China or Russia between us, or we should develop nuclear weapons, like North Korea. And then we would get the undivided attention of Washington, D.C. But we are a good friend and a friend that doesn't need a lot of attention. So whenever, let's say that, as we could see 3 weeks ago, they always remember us when they need us. Which is, and that's okay. If you're a superpower, there are so many things that you have to deal with at the same time. That if there is a good friend that's not taking too much of your attention, or you're happy to have him. But we are treated really well. And the only thing that I miss, and I wish I were the Irish ambassador, the Swiss, when they immigrated to the US, they kind of disappeared in the general population. So they mixed with the Germans, the Dutch, whatever. So there is no Swiss constituency. And I wish I could go like the Irish ambassador to the White House and say, you know what, I control 3 million votes. So you better be nice to me. I can't do that because I do not control the people's Swiss origins voted in the US. But that's my only regret.
Mr. Messer, thank you so much. But before you come up, Steve, I have a yes or no question for you. Do you know Roger Federer?
Personally?
Yes.
No.
That's a shame.
I tried to get him to come for we had the after action party of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and we didn't manage to get him. Prochaine fois. Yeah.
My pleasure to introduce my colleague on the World Affairs Council board, Steve Hunting, who is going to close us out.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for the interesting discussion, and for all of you who are participating and come to this event of the World Affairs Council today. On behalf of the World Affairs Council, I have a certificate for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, and I'd like to present it to you, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Look at our photographer as you do this.
There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming today. I was doing some counting, and I know that there are people from born in at least 6 countries in this room, and there are probably more that I didn't notice. So thank you all for coming. I hope you take the opportunity to come to further events and join the World Affairs Council, a member if you're not so far, and we just welcome you to be here, and we especially thank the students for coming today. Have a great afternoon.